Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm not going to say good morning or good evening because Pablo's based in Santa Monica in California, so it's good morning for him, and it's we've got a lot of people from all around the world, so different time zones. I'm Mark Herson. I'm a coach, I'm an investor and a senior advisor at Endeavour, based in Cape Town, moving to New York later this year. Endeavour, as you know, and I'm actually going to read this, is a global nonprofit based in New York, present in 35 countries now, or 35 markets now, with the mission to catalyze job creation, innovation, prosperity by supporting high-impact entrepreneurs through a combination of mentorship, market access, and capital. There are now over 3,000 mentors globally for about 1,300 Endeavour companies around the world. In South Africa, we now have 28 Endeavour companies, including the likes of Clickertel, Aerobotics, Go1, Intersect, Sweep South, and a network of really amazing mentors. I think there's now over 150 mentors in South Africa. And in the last few years, South African Endeavour companies have done incredibly well, and we've seen growth on revenues of about 30% per annum, and the same for job creation, also about 30% per annum, which is fantastic. So today I'm really excited to chat with Pablo Pantan Leonie, who is himself an Endeavour entrepreneur from Spain. Pablo is the head of strategy, new ventures, and I'm adding health, although it's not in his official title, but it was there before he got his new title. So I'm still, and I know it's still his responsibility at Headspace, and he's based in Santa Monica. And as you may know from the invite, Headspace is a wellness and meditation platform with about 65 million active users now. They've raised $215 million in capital and really has been a rocket ship and a company that's been changing people's lives. Pablo also leads the Digital Health Next program at Stanford by Design, and maybe we'll get into that as well. So, you know, the title is quite broad. We're talking about leadership, meditation, mental health. Mental health is something that's something very close to me and to my heart. So maybe we'll get into more detail on that. And John, for the first time, we're opening up chat, so feel free to just announce who you are. And I think it's quite nice for people who are listening to get a better sense on, you know, who else is out there. And if you do have any more questions, we've got about 10 questions that came in through the invite, but feel free to add them to the Q&A. So fantastic. Let's go. I'm going to keep this quite informal. I've got a beer next to me that I've already opened. Pablo's got, it's still morning for him, so he's got water.
It's 9 a.m. So,
Pablo, thanks so much for joining us, and yeah, really appreciate your time. But yeah, just generally, you know, maybe just a general question. Just, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, where you're from, your journey to becoming an entrepreneur and to becoming an Endeavour entrepreneur, and what got you to Headspace.
Sure. Well, Mark, thank you so much for the invitation. As you know, I'm a big Endeavour fan and part of the family. Endeavour helped me a lot on my journey, so always happy to join any Endeavour event. Well, my journey, I'm going to go high level. Feel free to ask me a specific question. We can go deep in any of the different phases. But I grew up in Barcelona. In college, I started in Barcelona doing economics, and then I finished my college degree in Switzerland. And then it's when I saw that many of us had the same problems when moving to a different country in Europe, meaning the classical where to live, if you want to work there as a student. So I saw a gap, and I started my first company. And actually it was kind of a marketplace for students offering housing options, internships, all this kind of stuff. So it was a lot of learnings, great experience, but yes, mainly learnings, meaning, again, don't run too fast. Make sure that we end up being in kind of 14 countries. before nailing it in the first one or second one. But it was really good, great experience, and that informed kind of my next step. So then I was after that, so we kind of, I exited the company, we sold the company, and then after that, I was an investment banker, but just for a few months. I quickly realized that I could do the job, but it was not fulfilling, and education and healthcare is what drives me. So this is when I started my second company in the healthcare space.
Just to jump in there a little bit,
Sure.
how did you get to the sense that healthcare is where you wanted to be? What was that? What took you there?
Good question. Well, at the end of the day, as you know, being an entrepreneur, it's so fun, but also it's very challenging. So at the end of the day, you know, when you hear and when you can feel that you're helping a lot of people, and especially, I mean, I respect all kind of entrepreneurs, but when it comes to healthcare, really having an impact on people's lives, so helping people to have a better quality of life, or it's so fulfilling. And that's when, you know, when you're low energy, you just read one of the testimonies like, oh my God, this says, I still do this at Headspace, meaning, you know, some days like I'm low in energy. Just I go to all the letters that we receive, all the quotes, Headspace, it's helping me with this. Even some people, it changed my life. This is what gives you energy. So I'm not saying, of course, I mean, every company changing your life in a different way, but when it comes to healthcare, it's awesome. So this is when I really saw this, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna put so many hours, you know, this is definitely, you know, very, very fulfilling, at least for me.
And so what was the idea of your second venture? Tell us a little bit about that.
The second venture was in the digital health space, what we call a care plan builder, meaning when you go to your doctor and after the visit, typically they prescribe you kind of a follow-up treatment. And some of this, it's called a care plan, and the care plan entails kind of typically medication or not, you know, and also kind of a big lifestyle component. So whatever it's a diet, you know, exercise, all this kind of stuff. And this has a huge implication. It's not just about taking your drugs. So we started developing kind of this specific care plans for different chronic health conditions, started in Europe. And then we moved the company to the Bay Area in 2014. That's when I moved to the US. We raised some money, 2016. I became an Endeavor entrepreneur. Endeavor helped us a lot doing kind of the, you know, going through Series A and how to scale and how to enter kind of different markets. And for example, Mexico, we had an office in Mexico as well. And then at some point, I'm happy to go deeper. There are a lot of learnings in 2016. But then there was a kind of a certain disalignment in terms of visions, you know, by founders and some of the investors. And then when I decided to move on, and it was a, you know, key decision. So should I stay in the US? Should I go back to Europe? Should I start my new company? And then I was so lucky that IDEO, a company that I respect and admire a lot, kind of offered me a very cool role to lead the digital health practice at IDEO. So for those of you who are not familiar with IDEO, it's the global innovation and design firm. They started human-centered design thinking, starting with member problems. So I had the opportunity. It was awesome. It was so many learnings. I had the chance to work with all the big kind of healthcare companies, as well as all the big new entrants, meaning tech companies and all these companies like, hey, can you help me some of the challenges to transform my company from product to service? That's what, you know, very strategic, but building new ventures. So my job was building healthcare ventures for all these big companies and working directly with board members, with CEOs of huge companies. So a lot of learnings and exposure. And that's when I saw the gap between physical health and mental health. Like many people approaching, okay, we're going to start the solution for physical health. We're thinking about mental health. Well, guess what? mind and body are in the same place. So you need a holistic kind of solution. And then it's when, I learned about, well, of course I knew Headspace and I was a Headspace user before, but I learned through a friend that Headspace was building this new venture within Headspace to build new products for specific chronic health conditions. So they reach out, they explain me kind of the opportunity, and I was like, this is perfect. This is it's kind of a combination between the gap that I'm seeing at IDEO, all these companies, and MedTech, because what I'm MedTech, my second company, what I'm doing is creating plans for different chronic health conditions, mental and physical health. That's where we are in just the last part of the journey at Headspace. So I still, like you said, I still kind of lead kind of Headspace Health, the subsidiary, building new products. But on top of this, they asked me also to lead strategy for the company across all the different parts, meaning B2B with our work with employers and then consumers. So everything from business strategy, M&A, pricing, market research, competitive landscape, regulatory strategy, technology strategy, as well as design research. And so going back to my IDEO days.
Okay, great. So I'm going to, maybe we'll go back to 2016, because, you know, the time that you left your second startup. What was going, I know, you know, it was a very busy time for you. And so what happened then? You know, tell us a little bit about that time, and
yes.
What made you leave? You know, when did you first start thinking about meditation? I know that you were under 30 on the Forbes list. There was a lot of interesting things happening.
You know, that's a great question. And I always love to be as upfront and transparent about 2016, because it's funny now, when I talk to healthcare people now, they said, well, because of COVID, 3 months means like 5 years on how fast we are, you know, the whole thing, it's moving. And it was same for me in 2016. So I think I grew up like 10 years, maybe in 1 year. I learned a bunch, meaning the first half of the year was awesome. So it was magic, meaning the company was growing. We were scaling after raising kind of some money, our presence in the US, same in Mexico. At the same time, I got married in June. So my wedding, it was a beautiful day. And then right after, it all started in October. So first on my personal life, my father-in-law just passed away from one day to the other. It was very hard. My wife was very, very close with him. And of course, we were in the US, you know, they were in Spain. So it was difficult because she was not there. But then right after, I was going very often back to Spain, where most of the team was based. And then I saw, you know, I started to see a gap between some of the vision between both of the founders, and between the US vision and more kind of the European vision. And so we started, you know, some tensions there, some disalignments. And we had kind of some conversations with board members and board, and then we decided, okay, which path we're gonna take. And the board decided to just stay more focused in Europe, specifically in Spain, versus not investing so much in the US. And to me, it makes sense strategically, just because it's not because the US have more money, more investors. No, from a digital health market standpoint, the US is a way more mature market because of Obamacare and many other things. So then it's when I decided to leave, in very good terms. I started, you know, continuing helping kind of the company. But then there was a moment, I typically don't share this too much, but this is in terms of one of the biggest learnings. So the best part of this is, some of the investors and potential investors that I met at MedTech, they started to introduce me to people, or even offering me options directly. So that was awesome. And that was very fulfilling, meaning like, okay, you know, they appreciate the work that I've done and what I'm doing. So there was an opportunity to be kind of the CEO of a small digital health company in Spain, owned by a big pharma company. And, you know, I briefly checked with my wife. I thought that was the thing that she wanted, go back to Spain, you know, to support her mom and the family and everything. And so she quit her job. We decided to leave our apartment. We even sent some boxes to Spain. We were ready to go there. And then while we were dealing with the paperwork, then I had a bunch of conversations with the main investor, you know, the new company. And of course, there was like, okay, is this a short-term, long-term gain for me? So I started to have some doubts, maybe too late. And then, true story, believe it or not, the day before leaving to Spain, my wife said, we need to talk. And I'm like, okay. And I said, what's going on? And she said, we're going to stay. I'm like, what? I thought you wanted to move back to Spain. She said, no, this is, you're not going to be happy there. And, you know, this is, now we have our home here. We have friends here. I know. I mean, I will, she said, I'm going to Spain just for 10 days to see my mom, but you're staying here and let's look for the new thing here. So, and then I got really good kind of advice from some investors that I know and other entrepreneurs, like, don't rush it again. You already did it. So take some time. And then for a couple months, I started talking to many people and, you know, and then everything started to line up. I was, you know, talking to Apple, talking to Google, talking to other kind of, talking to other startups. But then, you know, when I had the conversation with a partner of health at IDEO, I felt that this was the right thing, because she told me, hey, we're very strong on medical device, but I need someone to help me to transform the whole healthcare practice in the more digital, you know, space. So and then it was one of the best moves I made professionally. But again, remember, between October, you know, and I think it was April. So for 6 months, oh my God, it was one thing after the next. Like you said, yes, January 2016, before my wedding and scaling, yes, Forbes 30 under 30, everything good the first half of the year. And then from one day to another, it was not like failing. It was literally jumping out of the cliff.
What did you learn from that time? Did you start meditating during that period? How did you get to that? I mean, everyone's got their own story around when they started meditation. I wish I'd started meditating much earlier on. And I'm sure a lot of other people wish I'd started meditating much earlier on as well. But yeah.
Same for me. I wish I started earlier, because I think we did, well, personally, I did some things good my med time, but I didn't have a really good balance in terms of, you know, professional and personal life. I was working so many hours, not eating very well, not sleeping a lot. And then I was at the airport every other week. So flying either from Europe to the US, different city in the US to Mexico. And then it's when I kind of, I was on a United flight. After watching a movie, it's like, okay, I'm done. You know, I just need, my brain was, you know, kind of nonstop, you know, okay, one idea, the other. And then just, you know, out of nowhere was like Headspace. And I heard about Headspace. So I kind of tried a 5 minutes meditation. It felt really good. So then 2 days later, another flight, 10 minutes. I download the app. And then it's when I started the whole practice. And then it's like, of course, I saw the benefits myself immediately. When I mean immediately, after a few weeks, on, you know, less stress, more present. So, and since then, of course, I've been meditating, and then, you know, having the opportunity to work at Headspace and working very closely with the founders and their vision. That's awesome.
And so tell us a little bit about Headspace. You know,
Yeah.
how would you describe Headspace? Because when I've started, I mean, I've used a different meditation app. I've used quite a few. 10% Happier, Insight Timer. In the last few weeks, I've been using Headspace as well. But obviously, I've known about Headspace for a long time. But it's interesting. Headspace seems to be, it's not more of a habit formation company and a behavioral change company than a meditation company.
Yeah.
It'd be great, just to give us a little bit of insight around, just Headspace and what it is.
Sure. Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to respond to this, but then I missed one very important part of 2016. You didn't ask me to say this, neither Adrienne asked me to say this. But of course, when you're doing pretty good, you have a lot of friends. And, and when you feel you have less friends, you still have good friends, but not so many. And Endeavor was awesome. So Endeavor, specifically Adrian, so supportive, connecting me with so many people, really anchoring on, hey, it's not about the company. We selected you as an entrepreneur. We saw something in you, and this is where Endeavor gave me a lot, and it felt me I felt part of the family, and this is why, of course, I'm always happy to, if I can give back in any way. So sorry, just parentheses on this, but I think it was important to say this.
For me, thanks for saying that. I mean, for me, that's the magic of Endeavor. I mean, mentors are probably the most important thing I think anyone can have in their life, whether it be for, I think, your career, your startup, whatever it is. And Endeavor just has that. I mean, 150 mentors just in South Africa, and the quality, it's absolutely incredible, and people that care and have the empathy and will take the time. Those are the sorts of people, that one needs. I mean, I've missed that in my career. On and off, I've had great mentors, but I've realized the power of mentorship, and I think that's really something that Endeavor brings. And it's true, when you leave that high flying company or that brand. I mean, I was at Sony BMG Music in New York, and all of a sudden I left, and I thought I'd become a coach. All of a sudden, and I realized, people don't answer the phone off, when you're no longer at a big brand, or you no longer, you've got to do things differently. So having that support is fantastic.
Totally. And I think, and that's one of the things that I really like. So everyone at Endeavor just looked me in the same way when I was an entrepreneur of my company, when, even when I was at IDEO at Stanford with a lot of, connections and good brand behind me, and now at Headspace, exactly the same way. So that's what I really appreciate. So it's about who you are. It's not about, what you're working on, right now, meaning not the brand that you have behind, or if you're successful or not. So I really appreciate that.
Which funny enough takes you into, a lot, for me, what meditation is about, which is trying to at least, remove yourself out of your ego, and to feel a little bit more connected to everyone else around you. And I think the issue I had living in New York in the rat race was, you aren't, really connected to people often. You're connected to people through your job, but then your friends are quite separate. I think that a lot have probably evolved, and society is changing quite significantly. And I think a lot has probably changed in the last even 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was starting off and did some coaching, and I would speak to VCs, and, they would say, well, we the coaches, we now 15 years later, I think, it's changed. So I think partly due to a change in a culture and a movement, very attributable to companies like Headspace, taking us back to Headspace.
Yeah. 100% agree. And sorry that I did this parenthesis, but I wanted to make sure to cover this. So going back to your question on Headspace versus kind of other apps in the space, and what is Headspace and how it is, how different it is. Well, our story is we were the first company in the space, meaning the first digital company. Meditation has been here for, years and years. But Andy, our founder, was it's a former Buddhist monk. So he was also teaching kind of mindfulness and meditation. And then he started working when he moved back to the UK. Both founders are from the UK. Then he started working at an integrative medicine clinic. And then he met with Rich, our CEO and co-founder. Rich was, an executive, super burnout, super, stressed, and kind of meeting Andy and how Andy helped him kind of change his life. And he wanted for as many people as possible to experience the same thing. So for 2 years, he was trying to convince him to build an app. And of course, when the whole .com boom and internet started, Andy was in a monastery, so he was not really into it. And so they started an events company, but then they launched kind of the first app, kind of the first version 2 years later. And then the whole thing started. So over the years, to your point, more companies kind of enter into the space, and it's great because the whole category is growing a lot. And as Andy always says, what he really cares is as many people being aware every day, and as many people kind of benefiting of mindfulness. I would say the main difference of Headspace, it's exactly this, going back to the early days. So for us, it's always science first, meaning there are other companies, of course, first mindfulness, there are many different parts of mindfulness. People think mindfulness is just meditation. Meditation, it's one form, of mindfulness, but Headspace goes beyond meditation, having some content around movement, mindful eating, sleep, so all the different parts, not just meditation. But then the most important thing, like I said, it's anchored in science. So today we have 25 peer-reviewed published studies showing decrease in stress, increase in resiliency, decrease in depression symptoms, decrease in anxiety. So there are other companies out there, they're doing an awesome job and a great product. They're not anchoring so much in science. So this is why we're working a lot. Consumers, because there are many players now, they're getting more sophisticated. They want to see the evidence. And then, as well as employers, as you can imagine, and of course, in healthcare, it's a completely different game. In healthcare, if you don't have this evidence, you cannot play there. So this is what I think it's the main focus and difference of the company, but also making sure that we can personalize the journey depending on where you are. And we have so much content, everything from helping you through, your personal life. We have content for kids, very successful content for kids. Sleep, it's super successful. We have content for workplace, help you with productivity and all this kind of stuff, as well as in healthcare. Like I said, we have dealing with to help you cope with pain, for cancer, and going through, pregnancy. So a lot of content that we develop over the years, and we continue to, kind of developing more content.
So one of the things that I'm interested in is how do you, what are the values of the company, and how do you align those values and the culture of the company with meditation, mindfulness type of approach, versus taking $215 million in capital. And I can just imagine the conversations around what are your key metrics, what are your OKRs, what's your CAC, what are your growth numbers, how are you chasing revenues, what are your competitors looking like, what are your churn rates? I mean, all of the things that any consumer facing company would have. And then at the same time, this is obviously the stereotype, but you want to be, okay, we're being Zen now. Does everyone switch off their phone at 5 o'clock at night and go home or go into the beach?
That's a really good question. So I'm not gonna lie, of course we have some of these conversations, OKRs and and churn and all this kind of stuff, like any other consumer company. However, one of the main reasons because I work at Headspace is both founders since day one, they were very, very clear about the North Star. And so our mission is to improve the health and happiness of the world. And whenever I've seen this, many times, whenever we see there is a tension, even if it's a awesome opportunity, and they said no also to opportunities, partnerships, investors. And so they've been very careful, to select the partners that we want to work with, and also with in protecting our brand. So like I said, Andy's a former Buddhist monk, but richest background it's actually in branding and marketing. So he's really good. We have such a powerful brand because of Rich's vision and protecting kind of the Headspace brand. So this is why always, with what's our mission, our values. So selfless drive, curious mind, courageous heart, three values, know our employees. And also we want to make sure that we inspire, guide, and support our members. So kind of depending on where they are. So I know you may hear this many times, that yes, this is our mission. But seriously, I've seen, without going into details, but I've seen big meetings, with the executive team where we're like, oh, we could do this. There's a huge opportunity there. But then always you hear kind of Rich's or Andy's voice that it's like, well, no, this is not the vision of the company. And they're still in the day-to-day super involved. Yeah.
How have they managed to get the venture capitalists on board? I mean, do the venture capitalists, obviously you've selected, and you've been in a very, I suppose, in a great position to be able to probably choose your own VCs. But do they see you as a social impact, in a way, organization? How do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah, good question. Well, at the end of the day, we have a lot of initiatives, and happy to go deep into from our social impact arm. So we give free access to Headspace to teachers, and we give free access to Headspace to healthcare professionals. And we just launched a huge initiative to give free access to Headspace to the unemployed, both in the US and in the UK. But we started as a nonprofit. We're a for-profit company, but with a very clear, like I said, vision. And as you know better than anyone, kind of the whole process of talking to investors, fundraising. I'm not saying, yes, we were very lucky the investors we have, and like any other company, we also got no's, but we did our own due diligence on our side as well as theirs. Meaning, Rich, he always does a great job. Hey, this is the vision. This is where we want to go. And of course, then you start having a conversation between, kind of different investors. And then because we're playing in the consumer space, in employer space, and then in healthcare, we're like, oh, why you don't just focus on consumers? Like, well, at the end of the day, we've seen, and this is kind of the power of Headspace. The reason, because when people ask me why we're playing in kind of in the healthcare space, in the deep healthcare space, it's because we heard from two things from many healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, and others. Hey, Headspace, it's been very helpful for me. I'm recommending Headspace to my patients. At the same time, a lot of people living with chronic health conditions, like Headspace, it's helping me a lot. Thank you for developing this cancer pack, and why you don't kind of go deeper there. So we always anchoring on member needs. So it's not about, okay, now we want to go about the employer space. No, that's not how we make decisions. But there are other companies that they will decide, okay, no, we just want to focus here. But I think we have a very clear strategy on where we want to play, and that it's very aligned with our investors. And we had all these conversations with them before kind of agreeing to partner with them.
And just talking about mindfulness at work, how important is it? How does Headspace fit into that? I know you've got hundreds of very well-known customers using Headspace. Some of the Endeavor companies I know use it and get their teams to use it. How is Headspace used in the workplace? What impact is it having? And generally, how's it happening? How's it helping people especially during COVID?
Yeah, well, now I can tell you that, as you can imagine, the demand for for Headspace at work, what we call our offering on has kind of increased dramatically. And this is the beauty of course, COVID, it's very tough for all of us for many different reasons, but seeing so many companies standing up and say, we want to support our employees and offering Headspace, I think it's awesome. And so the way we have studies, as I mentioned, that show decreasing stress and also absenteeism in the workplace, increasing productivity, all this kind of stuff. And we have it's not just the consumer app, but a whole set of tools for employers to really launch it, to make sure that partner with the employees. So we started kind of a challenge program with the employees, and actually we unlocked for free. Typically this is kind of only if you're a client, but we unlocked for free some of these tools during COVID, just to support kind of companies. We also started doing some pilots with companies and offering kind of free access to Headspace for a period of time. So I think, on the employer side, the business has been growing nonstop since we started. We've been doubling revenues every year on the B2B side, but since COVID, as you can imagine, now it's even higher.
So if I want to reduce my stress and increase performance, what's the minimum that I need to get my team to do every day?
That's a really good question. What we recommend is, there's not a magic answer for anyone. It really depends on your journey. There are people that prefer to meditate in the morning what we recommend is 10 minutes every day in the mornings. However, there are people and very, also famous people that use Headspace, and they've seen they've been saying, for me, what works is 5 minutes in the morning and then 5 minutes in the afternoon. Good. If it works for you, that's what we should do, or just meditating at the end of the day. However, based on our studies, some of this you already, so for example, in focus, you see over 20% impact on increase of focus in some cases just after one session. But I would say that the minimum in order to see this impact is at least 3 days a week, 10 minutes over 30 days. So that's where you start seeing kind of the results in terms of reducing stress, anxiety. But we recommend kind of 10 minutes a day.
So how do I get my wife is she just won't meditate, right? I've tried everything. But she does yoga, so I've sort of get to go to a bit of, but she's A-type personality. She's a venture capitalist, so I can, how do you get her to, people like, how do, for the people out there, that she'll try it, done it once and will never do it again. What's the strategy for getting, the whole world onto meditating?
Well, look, mindfulness, it's not for everybody. So we should acknowledge this, but of course the benefits are there. So, your wife better than anyone. So I've heard all kind of cases. And in some cases, maybe you start when you see that someone is very stressed. Maybe for this person, it's like, why you didn't stop here for 5 minutes and try this? Or some other people that have problems to sleep, hey, maybe try this then. Or for some people that actually, I've heard also stories like, I started meditating when I was relaxed, sitting at this, looking at the sea, whatever it is. And then I started meditating. So I'm not going to say there is one way to do it. It really depends on the kind of person who you are and what resonates more with you, but really kind of transforming those moments as opportunity moments and just try it out. This is a part that the good thing about mindfulness and meditation versus other solutions, and there's so low risk, so you can just try it very easily. It's not a black box. It's not just, but of course you're not going to see the effects immediately. So that's the key part. It's you need to be committed to at least a month, if not more, to do it, and then you start experiencing all the benefits.
What are some of the statistics or metrics that have come out of employers in terms of impact on job performance or productivity?
We had we have several studies. One specifically a very successful one that we did years ago, more than on performance and productivity. It just even well, as powerful, even more powerful. So where we reduced kind of depression symptoms by 40%. It was a group of 250 employees, and a huge increase in compassion. But it really, of course, every study it's different. But when you see, and it really depends on how you implement this. But yeah, what we've heard from a lot of our, and this is the good thing, most of our, we don't have so much churn, as you can imagine, on the employer side as well as in the consumer side. In all the relationships we've been expanding to different countries and to different regions, just because one, the employees feel more supported, but then really help to, if you are more aware, if you're more present, then you're at your best to really kind of, your best work.
Yeah. Just going in a slightly different route, and staying on the consumer side, what are sort of the strategy or advice that you would give to someone building a consumer app? Have there been? I mean, I know it's a very long journey that Headspace has been in. For anyone that hasn't heard it, there's a great podcast on how we built this, in NPR, how we built this, that sort of goes through the journey. But I mean, are there any sort of pearls of wisdom that you've picked up around, that's helpful for a consumer-facing company?
Well, I mean, there are a few things. Like I said earlier, the brand. So protect your brand and invest in your brand. This is what I think one of the best things we've done. This is why when we start partnering in the B2C space, in the consumer space, people are already familiar with Headspace, some of them. And when you have to push from consumers because of the powerful of the brand, then of course it's, easier. It's still hard, but it's easier. On the other hand, I think one thing that Headspace did very, very good is kind of fighting against the stigma of meditation, meaning kind of the cartoons and how easy and playful it feels. I think we've done a pretty good job there. And also another thing is that we have content. So when you start, and of course we started, with specific content, stress, anxiety, all this kind of stuff. But then if you use Headspace as a consumer, you can use it with your kids, you can use it with when you're at work, when you're in personal life, when you are, so just really understanding the whole consumer journey and where are the moments where you can play, and just start very concrete with one before kind of trying to do everything. And I think this is one of the big lessons. Of course, you need expertise on marketing, as you know, in the consumer space, it's key. But I would say one thing that I also admire from Rich and Andy, they're so humble, and they've been kind of always hiring great talent and empowering kind of execs and their teams just to do their best. So I think that was also very smart.
Cool. What does the future look like? So your role, strategy, new ventures, health. I know there's some stuff that you can't share, but just to give a sense on, what does the future look like in digital health, or beyond, or beyond that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited. So I was very excited before COVID. Now, the whole thing, it's definitely accelerating. We have so many opportunities, partnerships, the employer space, like I said, it's expanding. And then, of course, just because it's my background, it's why they hired me. I'm very, very bullish about what we can do in healthcare. So we've started, to build the first kind of new products for specific conditions. We're seeing early results, super promising, and seeing all this movement around M&A, all this kind of there are so many opportunities for Headspace, especially because, like I said, I still see a gap between physical health and mental health. So Headspace approaches, well, we started in mental health and then we want to expand into physical health. But of course, I mean, I remember talking with, for example, just one anecdote, talking with endocrinologists, and helping people on with diabetes. There's so many solutions out there for diabetes, but then endocrinologists saying to us, well, I cannot treat diabetes if someone is depressed or lives with stress, or, this has a huge impact, on where they are. So I need to help them there first before we even can go deep into other areas. So that's the powerful, that's the opportunity for Headspace. That's where, we can either develop ourselves, for in certain areas, or partner with so many other companies there. So, and we're expanding very aggressively in new markets. And of course, now we have to invest. Now we have to be smart and where to invest the money that we just raised.
One of the questions people asked was, how many people in the world meditate?
The total number? Well, I can tell you, Headspace has over 65 million users across the globe, 190 countries. But yeah, the whole kind of mental wellness market has been increasingly growing year after year. So yeah, I think that the opportunity is huge.
And have you done any work around people that suffer from mental illness clinically? So people with depression, anxiety, bipolar, and working with, so for instance, I'm bipolar type 2, been on and off medication for many years. Do you work with, do you sort of do clinical research around that? And are there any instances where perhaps you've worked with, seen research where coming off medication is, people are able to do that through meditation or other practices?
Good question. The existing consumer product, Headspace consumer product, it's a subclinical intervention, meaning it helps with decreased depression symptoms, kind of anxiety symptoms. But most of the evidence, it's kind of stress, resiliency, compassion, versus just, it's not kind of the main treatment intervention, clinical intervention to treat, bipolar disorders or depression. So today we're a subclinical intervention. There is a huge opportunities to expand there, but this is the evidence we have today.
And in the future, do you see that happening where there could be FDA approved or other sort of approvals for some sort of digital therapeutics? I know, there's quite a few companies that I know have been working on it, Happify and others. Maybe you can or can't talk about it, but it'd be interesting to hear about, what does the future look like for digital therapeutics and, getting medical insurers, medical aids to pay for it.
Totally. This is the area that I'm more passionate about, since I've been since my mentor days in 2010 working on this. So yes, we have the digital therapeutic space. It's growing a lot, and now we have solutions like Achille, which is a video game for PTSD, kind of already has FDA clearance, paratherapeutics for opioids, and it's another solution, and they're working on getting clearance on some other solutions. So definitely, yeah, I totally see this. The answer is yes. I can see a lot of new digital therapeutic companies or existing companies in other space going into this space as Headspace is doing, and pursuing. It really depends on, when it comes to the regulatory, of course, I think you asked two questions and they're very different. One is the regulatory and safety profile. The other is kind of the business model. So on the regulatory and safety profile, it really depends on what is your intervention. Based on your intervention, then, you seek FDA clearance or not. On the business model side, yes, I think payers and pharmacy benefit managers now starting digital formularies. We've seen kind of some of the big partners. We're already working with insurance companies in the US, but also some in Europe that are covering the cost of Headspace. So yeah, I think this is just the beginning, and this is here to stay, and this huge opportunity.
Cool. Maybe we've got about 5 minutes left. Maybe we could talk about a little bit, maybe about leadership and just how leaders across, maybe just starting with Headspace and maybe beyond, how leaders that have been using meditation or mindfulness practices to help them in their sort of in running their businesses.
Sure. Well, there are a lot of, I'm not going to name kind of people, but there are a lot of very successful leaders around the globe that are Headspace users, in everywhere from the more the business world to top athletes to a lot of different people. And I think at the end of the day, it really helps you to be more aware of. It's all about helping you to be present. So, and just making sure that you take enough time for yourself, because this translates in being more productive on your professional life. And this is how leaders typically talk about their experiences in kind of using Headspace. Either, I take enough time in the mornings just to go for a run, meditate for 10 minutes. And then, yes, you're working maybe 1 hour less every day. And I don't know, I'm making this up. However, you are more aware in every moment, and you are way more productive. So this is, and this is why also, leaders at Headspace, we're experiencing ourselves. And there's a company policy that's awesome that you cannot schedule meetings between 10 and 10:30 a.m. and then 3 and 3:30 p.m. These are the 2 breaks we have. And it's recommended, of course, everyone can do, but we have time to meditate ourselves. So either at 10, of course you can do it before, kind of your journey or after, but 10 a.m., 3 p.m., we have 2 blocks where you can just, it's healthy, take a break, meditate if you want. Back when we were at the office at 10 a.m. every day, the whole company was meditating together. Now we do this virtual. But I think this is great, and we kind of share this best practices with all our partners on the B2B space, on the employer space.
And you keep to those time slots. What percentage of the company would be meditating during that period?
Good question. I think, look, when we were back at the office, it was a pretty big number. At the Santa Monica office, maybe, I don't know the exact number, between 230 to 40 people, more or less. I don't know, more than 200. And every day you could see, if you ask me, I'm not there every day, but pretty often, but you can see there, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 60 people, days. Once a week, typically Mondays, you see kind of close to 100, but it's a pretty good number. If you take, I don't know, up to 50% of that, or in every all hands, we do this all together. So the whole company and 4 offices together. So you see the screen, San Francisco, New York, London. So it's great because we come all together.
How are meetings started at Headspace?
That's a good question. I would say it really depends on the meeting, but in big group meetings, what we do actually, it's we start with even a 1 minute focus exercise, up to a 5-minute meditation. Of course, you're not going to meditate, for an hour during the meeting, but in a lot of meetings, we start with either 3-minute meditation or just 1 minute focus exercise altogether, because that's the problem. You run from one meeting to another, and then you don't, again, you just need to reset. And so in every one of us, this is what Andy says, every one of us, we have different routines. So for example, see here my glass of water, my technique, it's always between one room and the other. Even if I'm staying in the same room, I just try to walk, really close, grab some water and go back. It's my moment where, again, being present, know what I'm doing, reset and go to the next meeting.
Any other tips or tricks that for people out there?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, again, it's not what you read. It's not what, of course we recommend 10 minutes a day every morning, but definitely everyone's journey is different. So just make sure whatever fits for you. Even if it's, I don't know, before going to sleep, that's what works for you. Great. But my recommendation is just commit to at least a month, even start with 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then, you can decide if you want to continue or not, but because that's not for everybody, but at least commit to, doing a little bit every day for a month.
Okay, great. I think we're sort of run out of time. How do you end meetings?
Well, do you want to know? Yes, actually, I think it's pretty standard, but okay, are we all aligned? What are the next steps?
Yes. Okay, good. We don't do a 1 minute meditation. You want to tell us can I thrust this on you and tell us, give us a 1 minute meditation?
Oh, we could definitely do it. I mean, I don't do the meditation myself, of course. So we always either play Andy for a minute, or well, we have others. So Eve also, which is also at Headspace, and it's the female voice at Headspace. So I'm not authorized to kind of guide the meditation. I'm not the expert, but I recommend you to go to the Headspace app, download it for free, and then play it for 1 minute.
Maybe play it, yeah. One last question, which come up a little bit, and I've got it in my mind as well with young kids, is, obviously meditation is such a habit, and it's such a, you think about it, it's like, it reverses your brain's aging process. It calms you down. It de-stresses you. It helps you transcend your ego and makes you feel more connected and whole, and all of those things. It's sort of like a little bit of a secret that no one's told us about, because we've had this sort of, it's been a branding thing as well. I think it's been, over the many decades, it's been very badly branded. So I think that's amazing that Headspace has done that. But I think, what's still hard is, I think, for people to commit. But a question that's come up is around what about kids? How do we start with kids, and how do we get meditation potentially, if, not to parents, even, but to schools?
Well, this is why it's one of our big initiatives. So work in the US with K-12 teachers, so for the youngest kids. And it's funny because I even have friends that, well, now I'm using Headspace because my kid, uses Headspace during school. So kids is a big area for us. We have a lot of kids content. We have great partnerships with Sesame Street. But I think if mindfulness is integrated into kind of into our schools, into our education programs, definitely it's the best way, especially when I remember when I was a kid, I was distracted all the time. So you name it. So kids really like this, and then they can even, and they are the biggest advocates after kind of experience it. So yeah, I recommend starting with kids, whatever the family routine is. I don't know, before dinner, after dinner, for 5 minutes, and then starting kind of, and it's also, like I said, with Headspace and our team as a family, where you feel it's beautiful to do it with your family, all together. So yeah, I think it's something that I strongly recommend doing with your kids if you have time.
Fantastic. Great note to end off on there. Just want to say, thanks, Pablo, for taking the time and sharing so openly and sharing your time. and loads and loads more questions to ask you. And there's a whole long list here. But thanks again. Thanks to everyone for attending, and there'll be a recording of this made available. And I'm sure if you have any follow-up questions, you can send them through, and we can try and maybe to get Pablo to answer them as well. So thanks very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Mark, and everyone for joining.
Great. Thanks a lot.